Hey witches, welcome back to the channel. Once again, this is Hectarios, Witch of the Realms. For this video, I want to talk about reading your candles as far as divination or getting insight into your spell workings and things like that. That's what this video is going to be about. Picture that I found from someone else's Facebook page talking about reading candle flames. And as I was looking over this, I was like, because there's some things in here that I agree with and some things I don't. So y'all can pause this and read it. But like I said, when I saw this, I was like, that's interesting because there's some things on here that I agree with and some things I don't. So I figured I'll come on and give my insight, my opinion, my methods, how I read candles. So what I'm going to do for this video is I'm just going to sort of just follow the list, how this person listed everything, but I'm going to give my insight and my opinion on how I would read the different types of candle flame. And once again, this is like for reading your own spell work, basically. So the first one says small and bright. This person says that means success is coming. In my opinion, a small and bright flame that is persistent throughout the entire candle burn or whatever would mean to me that, yeah, it's like just a regular successful spell, no issues, no problems. But it's also a sign to me that it's not as powerful as it could be. That's my interpretation of a small bright flame. The next one that they have is dim, like a dim flame. For me, when I've seen a dim flame, usually the flame is very tiny and dim. They have that it represents a disappointment is in store. Now for me, when I see a flame like that, that's really small, really dim, but it's still continuing to burn, to me that means that the spell work is basically coming up against some sort of opposition. There's something that is oppressing the flame, oppressing the spell, and it's having to burn through that. So there is different layers to this, because I also want to say the candle flame can change throughout the spell work, as we all know. Obviously, there could be a point in the spell where it's very dim, the flame's very dim and small, but then later on it will get really bright and big and continue to burn that way. So there's different layers to this. I should have really prefaced this video by saying that when it comes to any sort of divination, there's different layers to it. When it comes to any sort of psychic perceptions or reading things, there's always going to be different layers to it because every situation is unique. So I also kind of want to recommend you guys to go back and watch my previous video. It was a Q&A video. I think one of the subtitles was The Language of the Gods, and that one's talking about how I read everything at all times. How sort of nothing is a coincidence. Everything, if you look into it and the symbolism behind it, there is some sort of underlying meaning and purpose for everything that goes on. And that's sort of my path as an oracle. I have to sort of look for that meaning in everything that's happening around me at all times. So that's sort of something that you should consider as well in general. But when it comes to reading candle flames and stuff like that, that is sort of where this overlaps, in my opinion. When you're casting a spell, when you're doing a candle spell, and how the candle burns, I feel there is messages there. So I just wanted to add that in. I should have said that at the beginning, but like I said, adding it now. And in the fact that there's multiple layers to this. If you have like a dim candle flame at the beginning of a spell, don't let that discourage you, because it could just mean that your spell is having to come against some sort of oppressive force or opposing force, and it's burning through that. As long as the candle doesn't go out, because that is one of the other things on this list. If your candle goes out, it means no success, according to this person. And in my opinion, I would sort of have to agree with that. If your candle goes out during a spell, I would assume or get the feeling or get the impression that that was a failure of a spell and you need to just recast the spell or do more work, put more into it. Like I said, to me, a dim candle would represent that there's a greater opposing force than what you've put into the work. So it needs to burn through that, or you need to put more energy into the work. You need to put more into it. That's my opinion. And it would be the same if it goes out. Whatever the opposing force was overcame your work. So you definitely need to redo it. Put more work into it. Put more energy into it. The next one that we have here is enduring. Enduring, it just means excellent luck as far as how they list it. Well, I think I know what that means. Sometimes when you do a candle spell, you will notice that the candle burns down really quickly. Whether if it's a taper candle, a votive candle, or a jar candle, sometimes the flame is so strong and so bright that it will just burn through the entire candle much faster than it normally would. And then other times you will notice that it seems to take a long time for the candle to burn down. I guess that's what they mean when they say enduring, because sometimes when I have noticed when I do a spell, the candle will burn for a very long period of time, much longer than it normally should. Taper candles, votive candles, jar candles. I seem to especially notice it in jar candles though. There'll be times when the candle burns all the way through and then it gets to the very bottom of the candle and it's like there's no wax left. But the flame will just keep burning and keep burning and keep burning and keep burning, and it's like it doesn't go out for a long time, and then eventually it does. But it just takes a very long time for it to go out. In those situations, I would tend to agree with what this picture says. Excellent luck is what they define it as. I would tend to agree with that. When I have noticed when candle spells do that, it does seem to mean that there's a lot of power behind it. It wants to keep the flame burning because there's just so much energy that is behind it. And those spells tend to have, in my opinion, great results when the flame does that. Now here's the one where I tend to disagree. Flickering candles. Because they have flickering and then they have sputtering. Those are two different things, okay? The flickering candle is when you see the candle flame sort of jumping, like it will look small and then tall and small and then tall really fast, like a strobe light almost. That's what I would consider as a flickering candle. For this person, they say it means wavering fortune or enemies. I disagree with that. I have always been under the impression and felt and been taught that when you see the candle flame jumping or flickering, it means that the spirits are near. Whatever forces you have called upon to help you, they are present there. They're present and they are putting their energy into the spell work. A lot of times I don't even see flickering candles when I do normal spell work, but it tends to happen when I specifically call on Goddess Hecate or some other spirit to help me in the spell work. That's when I will actually normally see the flickering candles. So I don't know why they said it means wavering fortune or enemies. That's very odd and different from what I've always felt and been taught with that. So if you see the flickering jumping candle, don't take it as a bad sign. It means that the energies that you have called forth, the spirits that you have called forth to help you in your spell work, are present and they're doing what you asked of them. So it's a very positive, very good sign. It's probably one of the best signs that you can see in your spellwork candle flame. Since they also have sputtering on the list, I'll go ahead and cover that one now too as well. And they have it listed as forthcoming romance. Once again, that's very odd to me. It's almost like they have these two backwards. When I see a sputtering candle is when it starts to get really low, but it's flickering at the same time. It's like sputtering out. It doesn't go out, but it's very low, very dim, and it's like sputtering, okay? When I see a candle flame doing that, that is when I would say, like, okay, yeah, something is wrong here. Either there's some sort of opposing force. Once again, I basically would assume that it means the same thing as a very small dim flame, but it's worse. A sputtering candle flame I would put in between dim and going out, right? It's sort of in that in-between state. It's on the verge of going out, basically. So if I see a candle flame doing that during a spell, I would basically get the impression and feel that definitely something is wrong. There's either some force coming against your work or opposing your work, and your spell work is really struggling and fighting for its life, basically, to continue to push on and push through it. So definitely that would be a point where I would be like, okay, I need to put more work into this. I need to put more energy into this and overcome whatever this is. But in the very negative sense, when it comes to sputtering or going out, like I said, that one, with that, I would definitely feel that something is more targeted against you. When it comes to sputtering and going out, I would basically say be cautious and be aware that there could be some forces that are not only just opposing your spell work, but are actually targeted against you. Like you might have a hex on you or something in regards to whatever area of your life that you're doing the spell work for. So that would be something that you would want to take into consideration when it comes to sputtering or a candle going out. Okay, the next one that they have on here is a large and bright candle. So this is when your candle flame is like really tall. It can be anywhere from a couple inches tall. I've seen candle flames be like this tall before. Okay, it can happen. If I see a flame doing that, I just feel and get the impression that there is a lot of power behind this spell, and there's no opposition whatsoever, and that it will probably most likely manifest very quickly with that type of energy. And they just have it listed as good luck. So yeah, I agree with that. It just means that the forces that you've called upon, the energy that you've put in, is like overpowered than it even needed to be. And because of that, it's going to have like really quick results, really good results. Next, they have leaning. So if you see the candle flame and it's like leaning and there's no wind, obviously, if you have like a fan or an air conditioner on that's blowing the wind and your candle's leaning, don't try to read into that. But if it's leaning and there's like no wind around, that actually can be used as its own form of candle divination. You can get yes or no answers depending on which way it leans, and which way you determine means yes or no. You could use that as a form of candle divination. They have it listed that it means change is coming though. So if you're not using it in a divination aspect, if you're just reading your spell candle flame, and like I said, there's no wind, but it's like leaning to one side or the other, to me that can represent many different things, because there could be situations where it's leaning towards one direction, like north, east, south, or west. You could interpret that in its own way. Like if you're doing a spell for love or something and the candle flame's leaning towards the south, I would say that's a good sign, because the south, the fire, the passion energy, that would be a great energy to have for like a lust or love working. Also, if it's leaning towards the west direction, for that emotional, loving energy as well, that would be really good. So you could pay attention to which compass direction the candle flame is leaning and interpret that as you will, whether that is something positive or negative for the work that you're doing. There's also the aspect that usually a lot of people, when we do candle spells, there's also other things on the altar. There could be certain stones surrounding the candle. There could be a picture of someone. There could be a jar spell that you've also done, or a poppet that you've made, depending on what type of magic that you're doing or what all you're including in your ritual besides just the candle flame, right? Or the candle. Pay attention as well. Maybe it could be that the candle flame is leaning towards a specific object on your altar, and there could be some sort of information that is being communicated to you there as well, or that you could interpret from that as well. So maybe if your candle flame is leaning towards a specific crystal, that can mean that the energies are really charging that particular crystal. Or maybe it's leaning towards a poppet that you made. That would mean that the energy is really flowing into that poppet, and different things like that. So that would be my interpretation of a leaning flame. Then we have sparking is another one. They have it listed as danger around or ill will. I don't necessarily agree with that, once again. So when you see your candle and it's letting off sparks into the air, right? I've had that happen before. Usually, once again, that tends to happen for me when there's spirits around. That might be something to help you determine what it can mean for you. Usually when I see sparks shooting off from the candle, I just take that as there's a lot of energy in here. There's a lot of power flowing through this, and I take it as a good sign pretty much all the time. So when I see the sparking candle, I just take it as a good sign that there's a lot of power behind it. I sort of read it exactly as I would with like a super tall candle flame. It's just a lot of energy, a lot of power behind it. And also things would be happening quickly. Things would manifest quickly from the spell work. But once again, the difference between the tall flame and the sparking is that the tall flames can happen on any sort of spell. In my opinion, any sort of spell work that I do could have a really tall flame. But the sparking tends to only happen, once again, when there's some sort of spirit presence around helping with the work. And the final one that they have listed here is twisting, and they have it as representing unseen enemies. So the twisting flame, I'm assuming what they mean by that is similar to the leaning flame, but it's sort of just going all over, right? It's like consistently just moving all around like this, okay? Like it's dancing. That I would also sort of interpret that as sort of a negative thing, to be honest. They have it listed as unseen enemies. To me, I feel like that means there's a lot of people surrounding the situation. There's a lot of other energies involved that sort of can make your spell work get lost in the current of all these other energies that are going on. In other words, you're not the only one that's trying to affect the situation. You're not the only one that's trying to do something with these energies, with these other people, whatever it is that you're targeting with your spell work. You are not the only one that's putting your intention to do something and shape these energies to your will. Basically, there's other wills involved, there's other people involved, there's other intentions involved that could sort of either overpower your spell and overpower your intention, or just sort of muddy it up and make it sort of get lost in that current of multiple people being involved, multiple intentions, multiple willpowers being involved with whatever the target of your spell work is. There's a lot of changing dynamics, basically, that you're trying to insert your spell work into, and that could be a problem. It could diminish the power of your spell. So read that as a sort of a warning to you that you might need to put more work in, or do work on that at a later time when other people aren't necessarily having such an effect on that intention or on that spell work. So that's basically all that's listed here on this little image interpretation thing. And that's really like the main ones. There are a couple more that I do want to go ahead and go into though that are not on this. If your candle is smoking black smoke, right? That's something that's very rare to happen on any kind of candle. And I would definitely say that that is a negative sign that something is not right with the spell work. There's other people, there's other energies, there's other forces that are opposing you, and your candle's basically burning through that. And it may or may not burn through it, because you, like I said, you also have to look at this in context of the entire spell working, okay? Don't just see this happen at one point of your candle spells burning and just assume that that's your reading for the entire spell. Like I said, there's different layers to this. We all know that a candle can burn for several hours, even days if it's a jar candle. So you just have to read the energies through the whole process, basically. But if you notice there's a point where your candle's putting off black smoke, but then later on in the spell it's normal again, then that just meant that your spell was burning through opposing forces, and it did that successfully. If the candle continues to burn black smoke the whole time, I would take that to mean you need to do more work, because it kept burning black smoke. It didn't get through whatever the opposing force was. Another thing is with jar candles in particular, if you notice the black smoke, but if it also starts to turn the jar itself black, that is a very negative sign as well. That means, once again, that there's some sort of opposing, oppressive force that's going against your spell work, and you definitely want to put more work into it. Depending, once again, did the black smoke occur the entire time, or did it just occur for so long and then it stopped doing that? So just make sure that you read the entire process of the candle spell in the whole burning process. Don't just see a part of it and think that that's a reading for your whole spell work. Spell work is a living thing. I can feel the energy from my spells days after I cast the spell. I can tune into it and sense if there's something wrong, or if I need to put more work in, or if it's going to be successful. You can do that. You can you can cast a spell and then days later you can tap back into that energy and get a feel for, is this enough? Is there something wrong with it? Is something happening? Has something changed it? You can do that with your spells in general. But definitely as you're doing a candle spell, as you're watching the flame burn down or the candle burn down, you can read the different stages of the energy and how it's working for you. But yeah, that's basically, let me see if there's anything else I wanted to add along with that. If you notice that your candle spell burns very quickly. I've had taper candles that can last for several hours, but I've also had taper candles that burn down within a matter of like 20 minutes. So if you notice that your candle spell burns very quickly, to me that means there's absolutely no opposition whatsoever. There's no hard work that your spell has to do. It basically means that your spell is going to be very quickly manifested. In my experience, if it burns really quickly, that's what it means. There is one more thing I want to touch on when it comes to tapers and votives. Sometimes you'll notice that your spells, your candle spells, do not drip any wax anywhere. It's like as if the entire candle itself is just being consumed into the air and it never drips anything. To me, I take that as a very positive sign when that happens, that the energies are being completely transmuted. There's no opposition. There's no, once again, negative forces against it. There's no hard work that it's having to burn through. It's just very clearly targeted and focused, and there's really nothing that's opposing you. If the candle drips a lot, if it's real messy, if it drips everywhere, spreads out all of your altar and stuff like that, to me that's sort of a sign that there was a lot, once again, that it had to work through. And I might even do another candle after that, because to me, the messy, drippy candles, I know it looks pretty, or it can, but there's a messiness involved with that. So to me, it just means that there's either some sort of opposition, or once again, with like a twisting, dancing flame, it could just mean that there's a lot of other people, a lot of other intention, a lot of other wills involved with whatever you're trying to target. So there could be some messiness in that regard with that. But basically that's all for this video. I just wanted to sort of give you guys a little bit of a starting point into doing candle divination as far as reading your own spell work and how that's working out, if there's any issues or anything like that with it. You know, if you guys have your own interpretations when it comes to reading your candle flames, leave that down below in the comment section, not just for me but for everyone else who comes across this video, because we can all learn from each other, and we might not all get the exact same impressions from different types of flames from our candle spells. So like I said, if my interpretation resonates with you, then that's cool, but if it doesn't, that's also fine. You have to trust your own intuition and your own interpretations of things, because only you know what you're feeling from the energies, right? At the end of the day, the way that a candle flame burns or looks, we'll all get different feelings from that. And I do believe as well, like I said a minute ago, we can tap into our spell works and know what we're feeling from it, if it's working, if there's something that's coming against, things like that. So you have to also trust that aspect as well. Just what are you feeling from your spell? And then you have to say, okay, but what is this flame also trying to tell me? And you'll find the answers within that. I'm sure you will. Actually, there is one more that I should say. If you're doing a spell in a jar candle or a glass candle holder and the glass ends up shattering or breaking, I can interpret that in two different ways. Either as something negative, like something powerful was working against you and against your spell and basically broke your spell. But it could also mean that your spell work was very powerful and it was too strong and it just broke the jar. Once again, when it comes to that, I would say make sure that you interpret the other things surrounding that. Like, was the candle smoking black first and then it shattered the jar? That's probably the negative aspect. Was the candle flame just really tall or flickering and then the jar shattered? I would say that's in the positive aspect of it. So just make sure that you read all aspects of your candle spell and see how it all fits together, plus what you're feeling just energetically from your spell work. So just had to add that last bit in. So that's going to be all for this video. Hopefully this was interesting and gave you guys some ideas and insights, and I will look forward to what you all have to say in the comments. And I'll be back. Probably the next video that I'm going to record will be on the July full moon and the reading for that. So that'll probably be the next video for you guys. Until next time, as always, Hail Hecate, hail to the witches, and blessed be.